The Walcheren Causeway, October 31st, 1944. I recall I sat on the porch that night, sipping whiskey, straight and neat, watching tiny goblins and lanterns bright flitting up and down the street. But I don't recall his approach at all. He just suddenly came into view, standing straight and tall by my garden wall, and I greeted him as I greet you. "Good evening, soldier. God save the Queen. Sit down, man, and slake your thirst with some good malt scotch, for it's Halloween. It's October the 31st. The kids are all out in the neighbourhood, and I'm drinking some quiet toasts to the wee folk there, to my own childhood, to the darkness and the ghosts." He turned and eyed me. I'd never seen his face in my life before. "Sure," he said, "I'll be happy to toast Halloween. Halloween 1944. He crossed the lawn and he shook my hand, and I cheerfully poured him a glass. I assumed from his clothing he played in a band. He was kilted and glittering with brass. He proposed the Calgary Highlanders. We downed it. I poured us one more. "To the Walcheren Causeway," he said. "Halloween 1944. "To the what?" I asked. And his eyes went blank, and a strange look came over his face. And embarrassed, I flushed and my spirit sank, for I felt myself somehow disgraced. "The Walcheren Causeway," he said it again. "It's a roadway, a long, narrow belt of a road built out over the water and fen to a Dutch island out on the Scheldt. Just a high, built-up roadway, flat, narrow, exposed to the wind and the rain and the sleet. God, the first time we saw it, we never supposed we'd be crossing the thing on our feet. It was 2,000 yards long, and each narrow foot of it made it a breeze to defend for the Germans who held it. You see, they could shoot from the roadblock they built at one end. I know 2,000 yards might not seem a long way when you're taking a walk with your sons, but at night, in a fight, it's a bloody long way, looking right down an enemy's guns. They had told us at first we'd be crossing in boats to assault Middelburg across the slough, but the mud was as thick as the fear in our throats, and it stuck our assault craft like glue. But we had to cross over. We had to attack, and by land there was only one route, and that route was the causeway, straight, long, bare, and black. Well, the Highlanders moved in on foot, under cover of darkness, with no place to halt, no surprise, no manoeuvring room, just a mad midnight dash, a straight frontal assault into madness, confusion, and doom. Jerry's mortars and field guns were well zeroed in, and the roadblock machine guns as well. But we had to approach them, engage them, and win. So we charged them like bats out of hell. All the guns, theirs and ours, turned the night into day, and the shell splinters, bullets, and stone fragments turned the air solid, and slaughtered men lay where they fell, lifeless, limp, and alone. 12th Platoon of B Company took the full force of the hellish defensive force crossfire. They were out in the front, unprotected of course, and too soon they were forced to retire. Daylight came, and the sight of that shell-splintered road would have riven an archangel's brain. But D Company moved forward and took up the load, and the whole place erupted again. How they did it, God knows. But they went all the way to where no man could hope to survive, and they captured the pillbox, they carried the day, and the rest of us walked in alive. Like the Light Brigade charging the jaws of death, riding into the mouth of hell, they smelt the stink of the demon's breath as their friends and their messmates fell. Like their Highlander forebears who fought with pride on the rolling Zulu veldt, they faced extinction and stemmed its tide on that causeway over the Scheldt. Like their sister regiment's thin red line on the balaclava clay, they defied false gods for the narrow spine of the Walcheren Causeway. As the Calgary men took St. Julian in the war that had gone before, these ones captured the causeway to Walcheren and distinguished the oak leaf they wore. His voice tailed away, and he stared at me, and between us a silence hung. As I reached for the bottle to charge his glass, I was thinking he looked too young to have seen the things he said he'd seen. But then shock unhinged my jaw, for the chair sat empty where he had been, and the night had turned cold and raw. I jumped up and ran to the garden wall, and I searched the empty street, but I saw no sign of him at all. I heard no sound of feet. Then his voice said clearly, "To Walcheren, don't forget," inside my head. And I shivered and turned and went slowly into a sleepless, comfortless bed.